What is going on, everybody? Today, I have a different style of video for you guys. We're doing another tier list. I know it's been a long time since I last done one, so I thought I might as well dive into this with this new Adesanya business and him losing to Sean Strickland. I made a ton of videos this week about it, so might as well just add one more to that. But today, we're going to go ahead and rate every single title fight of Israel Adesanya's. Now, when I rate this, I want to make sure that it's very specific and we have a nice rule set and give a very specific reason to why I'm putting this into this category. So we're rating every single title fight based on the excitement of the fight and Israel Adesanya's overall performance in it. Now, this is totally objective. This is totally opinionated. So if you do disagree, leave your comment down below and what you think this tier list should be. But this is fairly simple. If you haven't seen a tier list video before, you should pretty much have a grasp in the first 15 seconds. It's fairly simple. So I'm gonna go ahead and dive into this right now. All right, everyone, here we go. Here's the tier list from S tier to D tier. As you can see, S tier is a bit smaller than the rest of the rows. S tier is reserved for only one fight that I can put there. Only one fight from Israel Adesanya's career or this title fight history can I put at S tier. Everything else is below that. That's A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier. And that's how I'm going to rate every single individual one. I know my face is a bit smaller than usual. I'm sorry. Bear with me. It's kind of hard with the whole camera setup to make this tier list somewhat doable, but we're going to go ahead and dive in, stop wasting time, and go ahead with our first fight of today being, bam, Israel Adesanya's most recent fight off the gate. We're putting it here. Again, I'm rating this off of excitement and Israel Adesanya's performance in it. And so I have to put this immediately at D tier. There's no way I can't put it at D tier. This fight is absolutely horrendously awful for Adesanya, and it wasn't the most exciting fight in the first place. Listen, it was mainly Sean Strickland at range, piecing up Adesanya. Outside of that first round, there really wasn't much to it besides basically some jabs, 1-2s, not really any knockdowns. Nobody was really getting hurt, and it was mainly Adesanya getting tooled up. So it's already pretty much F tier, a tier below this for Adesanya's performance. And in terms of excitement, it was probably C tier, B tier at best with the first round knockdown. So obviously, this is Adesanya's worst fight of his entire career. It has to go at D tier no matter what. Moving on, up next, we have, bam. Oh, I hate this fight. I still can't watch this to this day. This is Israel Adesanya versus Alex Paha 2, the rematch in MMA, obviously not in kickboxing, but in the rematch in MMA. This has to go, I think, pretty clear A tier for Israel Adesanya. In terms of his performance, he was losing that first round in that second round, but the KO was so wicked. It was such a nice KO from Israel Adesanya. As much as I hate watching that over and over again, I couldn't watch MMA for a whole week after this. I was so upset about Paha losing. Paha is one of my top 5 favorite fighters, so watching him getting KO'd out cold was really, really hard for me. But this was a nasty, wicked KO by Adesanya. Even though he was losing in that first round and that second round, he came out there and just landed a nice 1-2 and put him out cold. It was KO of the year. It made Adesanya have a resurgence in popularity. It was, I mean, this is probably, you could argue this for being S tier and you could argue it for being B tier. I don't know. I mean, the reason why it's not at S tier is because of he was losing those first 2 rounds, but you can definitely argue this to be S tier if you want it to be that way. It is what it is. But moving on, up next, we have this fight from the right side. We have Adesanya versus Cannonier. This one is a pretty easy C tier. I won't say D tier, but this is a pretty easy C tier because, and the only reason it's not D tier is because Israel Adesanya won the fight, right? This was mainly a pretty lame and boring fight. If you don't think it was lame and boring, you're probably coping. I'm sorry. It was pretty much Adesanya at range, landing leg kicks, and Cannonier having a difficult time to close the distance. The funny part about this whole thing is like Cannonier technically has a win over Strickland, and so going into this fight between Strickland and Adesanya, Cannonier couldn't do much to Adesanya. He couldn't close the distance. He was getting out leg kicked. It was a boring fight, but you would think with how close that fight was between Cannonier and Strickland, Strickland had no chance. That's probably one of the main reasons why I picked Adesanya to win, because his performance against Cannonier. So it makes no sense to me, but overall, in terms of this fight, it was a decent performance from Adesanya. It wasn't anything crazy. It was pretty boring and lame. It was a hard watch. I kind of just got through it, if I'm being honest with you. But he did win, and he did keep his belt and retain it. So I have to put it at C tier at least. It was pretty much just leg kicks at range. Nothing too special. Moving on, up next, we have Yoel Romero versus Israel Adesanya. This one is, I think, an easy D tier. Both of these guys did not show up to fight, and the whole narrative was Adesanya is a counter striker. I don't care. This was probably the worst fight of the year. It derailed a lot of hype for Israel Adesanya. It's a boring fight. It wasn't anything. The first round, there was 4 strikes to 2 in favor of Yoel Romero. When there's only 6 strikes landed in a total round, when with both guys, I just can't put it anything higher than D tier. I just can't. It's a lame, boring fight. It was not worth the watch. It was a waste of money. I think at the time it costed $50. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This was not worth $50 at the time. And if it was today's standards, it's definitely not worth the $80 to rewatch that fight. I can't. It was Israel Adesanya's worst fight, I think, by far in his career, besides the Strickland one. I think in terms of, it was his worst win. We'll put it that way. It was his worst win of his career, and he kind of arguably lost to Romero in hindsight. I don't know. It's a debate nowadays. I don't care. It was a terrible fight. I don't care who won or who lost. They both deserve to lose, in my opinion, but it's still the worst fight of Israel Adesanya's career. Moving on, up next, we have Adesanya versus Paha 2. Now, this one is kind of a really tricky one to really put a grasp on. I'm going to put it at B tier right now. I'm going to put it at B tier because Adesanya did lose, but he didn't have a bad performance. You know what I mean? He wasn't really losing the fight the entire time and got outstriked by Paha. I think on the feet, Paha showed that he was the better kickboxer of the two of them, but he was winning the majority of this fight before losing in that 5th round. So it loses some points because Adesanya did lose in that 5th round. But in terms of excitement, it was there. The first round, he almost KO'd Paha. Second round, it was just like a tit-for-tat striking match, which I think Paha won that round. Third round was all grappling, top control from Adesanya. The 4th round was Adesanya getting the better of Paha on the feet. In the 5th round, he lost by KO. So it is what it is, man. I can't put it at A tier because it seemed to have its lacking moments in terms of excitement. And Adesanya also lost, so it knocks it down from A tier immediately because he did lose that fight. So I think B tier is where it fits perfectly here. So B tier it is. Now moving on again, we have Adesanya versus Bovich. Now, this one I think is a pretty clear C tier. He also lost in a boring fight. The reason that it's not D tier is because it was surprising that Bovich was doing so well and was actually beating up Adesanya. Don't be fooled by the commentary. Don't be fooled by Joe Rogan. Adesanya was getting outstriked is a better word. I think it's the right word, actually. He was getting outstriked for the majority of this fight, and then he got taken down, I believe, the 4th and 5th rounds. I think the 3rd round, too. So overall, it was a pretty boring and lame fight. I don't know, but I'm putting it at C tier because I just want to have something at C tier, I guess. I don't know. You can put it at D tier if you want, because Adesanya did lose convincingly and got kind of exposed by Jan Blachowicz in the striking department and the grappling department, but he was going up a weight class at 205. He seemed to be a bit undersized compared to Jan Blachowicz. So I'm giving Adesanya some excuses here, but I think C tier is where this most likely fits. D tier can be argued. B tier, no way, he lost the fight, and it was not very exciting at the same time. Moving on, we have this one, I think, is easy. Adesanya versus Costa, the Costa fight. This was the easy A tier. This was the best performance by Israel Adesanya, and you can argue this to be S tier. If you want to put it in S tier, you're totally justified to put this fight in S tier because Adesanya's performance was unmatched like no other. There is kind of an asterisk next to this because this is the infamous Gyno fight. So I mean, maybe Adesanya got some roids for this one. I mean, he did have a puffed up chest or breast in this one. So you can kind of, I don't know. But no matter what you believe, if he's on roids or not, I personally do believe that he's on some sort of gear. This was a great performance by Israel Adesanya, and it has to go A tier. No doubt, you can definitely put it in S tier if you so choose. Moving on, up next, we have Vettori, the Vettori fight. This one is definitely, I believe, maybe B tier. You can argue B tier. But I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna put it in B tier. I want to put it in C tier. It's a low B. It's a B minus fight. Adesanya did have a good performance. He did win pretty clear and convincingly, outstriking Vettori. But it was a very, very boring fight. Very lame fight. This was worse than I think in the Cannonier fight. It was pretty bad. It was pretty lame performance by Israel Adesanya. But he did win convincingly and clear. I think he won 50-45. So I have to put it at B tier. Regardless of how exciting the fight was, it's an automatic B tier because Adesanya did win 50-45, I believe. I think there was maybe one round for Vettori. I think one judge scored one round for him. I don't know. I forget the scorecards. But watching this fight, it wasn't a very entertaining performance. But he did win, I guess. So B tier it is for Israel Adesanya. Moving on, up next, we have Adesanya. You can't see it. We have Adesanya versus Whitaker 2. This is 2. Actually, this is 2. This one I think is a clear C tier. You can definitely argue for it to be in D tier. But I think Israel Adesanya actually lost this fight. I think he lost to Whitaker 3-2 based on, I think, the second, and the fourth, maybe. I kind of forget the rounds that happened, but I think Whitaker did win this fight. And so Israel Adesanya did manage to win, but it's arguably a robbery. And then it was, I think, one of the more lame and boring performances from Israel Adesanya. This was actually a leg kick at range kind of fight where he barely outstrikes his opponent. It was not entertaining in the slightest. It was pretty lame. There was some good moments, I guess, with a knockdown in round 1 by Adesanya, but it was kind of a weird off-balance knockdown. So it wasn't like he really rocked Whitaker in this fight. It was kind of just like, it was weird. I don't know, but it was just very boring, and he arguably lost. So I think this is very, very much C tier for Israel Adesanya. Moving on, I think the next one is the first Whitaker matchup. It is the first one. This one is easy A tier. Great performance by Adesanya. Came in there, unified the belt, put down Whitaker in round 2, knocked him down in round 1. Pretty simple A tier. Great performance by Adesanya. It was exciting too because he was putting the work on Whitaker in this first fight. So it has to be an easy A tier for Israel Adesanya. There's not much to say about this one because it's a great performance. But moving on to the last one, you guys kind of guessed it. I debated about putting this one in the video in the first place, but I have to go ahead and put it in here because it deserves some props. It's easily the Kelvin Gastelum fight. It easily is this one. Even though Adesanya did have a tough time and it wasn't back and forth war, the amount of excitement in this fight just easily takes the cake for S tier. It's the best fight of his career. This is what really put Adesanya on the map. This is what made Adesanya Israel Adesanya. You know what I mean? This fight garnered all the hype for him. It pretty much made him what he is. I mean, the Anderson Silva performance was pretty lame and boring, but it kind of gave him some name credit or some street cred. I don't know what the word would be. But this one put him on the map, and what a great performance by Israel Adesanya, able to tough through and grit and beat Kelvin Gastelum, knocking him down in that 5th round and securing it for himself. It's the not infamous, but it's the famous one where he's like, "I'm prepared to die," mumbling in the corner with the camera on him. Great fight. It was a back and forth war. Again, it wasn't the best Adesanya performance because he was having a difficult time with Gastelum, but the pure excitement completely overrules that. I have to put it at S tier. Easy S tier. So that's the video today. If you disagree or agree, leave your opinion down below in the comment section. I do love to hear that. Here's the full list. Enjoy. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell icon for notifications. I'm out of here. Peace.